Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Luke, and today we're going to compare traditional IRAs and Roth IRAs. And the main thing that we're going to compare is the benefits that each of these IRA retirement plans have. And so, the benefit of a traditional IRA is the fact that you can deduct your contributions at the end of the tax year. And the benefit of the Roth IRA is the fact that you do not have to pay any tax on your withdrawals during your retirement. So, you have to make sure that for each of these plans, you are taking money out after the age of 59 and a half, because that is when you do not have to pay a penalty tax. Now, of course, there's always exceptions to the penalty tax if you decide to take out your contributions or your earnings before the age of 59 and a half, but we're not going to get into that today. So, as you can see here, I have a bunch of numbers on this little sequence that I made to compare these two traditional IRA and this Roth IRA. And we have two people that are contributing to the Roth IRA and the traditional IRA, Joe and Steven. Okay. And remember, I am trying to compare the benefit of being able to deduct your traditional IRA contributions to the Roth IRA's ability to not have to pay any tax on its withdrawals during retirement. So I am assuming that Joe and Steven are just single dudes and they have a lot of expenditures, and because they have a lot of expenditures, they are only willing to contribute the same amount of money to their retirement plans every single year. And the only reason why Steven is contributing more towards his traditional IRA is because he knows that at the end of the year, he is able to deduct his contributions and get that money back. And so Steven's traditional IRA contributions in this example that I made for you are only increased by the amount of tax that he's going to save at the end of the year. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. Like this right here is my calculation for how I got this number for Joe's Roth IRA contributions between the age of 50 and 65. And I just multiplied the maximum contributions after the age of 50 that you can do of $8,000 every single year by their marginal tax rate of 0.24%, which shows their savings of 1,920%, or just $1,920. And I subtracted that from 8,000 to get $6,080. Okay. And then I did the same thing here and here and here. And you can hopefully understand where I'm coming from. I feel like it's a pretty straightforward example. But if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment and I'll answer that as soon as possible. Now, both retirement accounts are going to use a 7% interest rate. As you can see, between the ages of 25 and 30, the way I set this up is I have Joe contributing $2,668 every single year between the ages of 25 and 30. And then I have Steven between the age of 25 and 30 contributing $3,511. And then between 30 and 40, Joe's making a little bit more money, so he contributes more. And then Steven's also making more money, so he contributes more. And then the cycle keeps going, and they contribute more money every single year or every next couple of decades, because they are now getting pay raises and all that good stuff. And I just wanted to make a quick note that I'm using the 24% marginal tax rate for Steven's contributions. So that's why we are multiplying that $8,000 by 0.24 to get that $1,920 to subtract from the $8,000 to show how much Joe can afford, because that's what we have to do to effectively compare the benefit of the traditional IRA to the disadvantage of the Roth IRA. Okay. I think, again, this is pretty straightforward. You can see that between 25 and 30, uh, Joe has 15,000. Between 25 and 30 for Steven, he has 20,000. Joe has 78 between 30 and 40. Steven has 103 between 30 and 40. And then 40 and 50, 218. Steven, 40 and 50, 287. So he definitely has a lot more. And, by the age 65 for Joe's Roth IRA, he has $755,000. But Steven, at the age of 65, has $994,000, which is obviously much more than 755,000. So now we're going to see if the benefit of the Roth IRA is going to outweigh the benefit of the traditional IRA. So let's go over into their retirement calculations. Now I use an Excel document to calculate this. It's a whole thing. It's a little sloppy, but it gets the job done. And I use that to figure out how much money they're going to have at the end of every year, considering their withdrawals and a 4% interest rate. And for Steven, I also took into account the fact that he is going to have to pay tax. Now, I'm assuming that during retirement, both Steven and Joe would like to have $40,000 every single year for their ideal retirement, which I understand really isn't a lot of money, but they will also be getting Social Security. So, they're not just going to be getting $40,000. Notice that Steven is going to have to withdraw more money every single year because he has to pay tax because he used a traditional IRA. So he's going to have to pay federal income tax and possibly state income tax, depending on what state he lives in. So right now, with a $45,281 withdrawal, he's going to have an effective tax rate of 11.66%. So you can see that in the first year, Joe loses $11,000 and Steven only loses $7,000. And that should give you a good indication of how this is going to go in the end. We're just trying to see if having more money in the beginning is better than having less money in the beginning, but not having to pay tax on that lump sum on your withdrawals from your lump sum during retirement. So as time goes on, you have Joe at age 70 with 694,000 and Steven at age 70 with $955,000 left over in his traditional IRA. And then Joe 75, 619, Steven 75, 907, Joe 8528, Steven 8848. Okay, so you can obviously see there's a big difference here already. And as Joe's money keeps shrinking, as they are only earning a 4% interest rate during their retirement, you're multiplying that times the total to show how much growth that they're getting during retirement. And so if you multiply 4% times 528 and 4% times 848, obviously you're going to get a lot more after multiplying it times 848. And you're going to get a lot less after multiplying it by 528. So that's why it's so important to begin your retirement with really as much money as possible in your IRA or whatever vehicle you have, depending on your situation. So we're going to keep moving along, and you can see that I ended this at age 95 for both of them. I'm assuming they're both going to live to age 95. Steven has much more money than Joe. Joe still didn't run out, so I think that's awesome. I think that's good. That decision didn't shoot him in the foot after all, but he does not have as much money to leave to his heirs or a charity or anything like that. But Steven is crushing it here. He has $585,000. And yeah, traditional IRA wins. So this is the first example that I wanted to show you comparing the traditional IRA and the Roth IRA with their specific benefits. And remember, the main reason why the traditional IRA One is because it really started out with much more money than the Roth IRA started out with during retirement. And the fact that the traditional IRA had to pay another $5,000 in tax every year does not matter when it comes to just having more money to begin with. So the traditional IRA's benefit of being able to deduct your contributions at the end of this every single year is ultimately what led to its victory in this little competition that I made. So now we're going to look at another scenario that I made where instead of having different contributions every single year, Joe and Steven are going to have the same contributions every single year. Now, I understand that obviously the Roth IRA will do better than the traditional IRA because Joe's not going to have to pay tax on his withdrawals. And you can see that I'm also using a 7% interest rate here as well. Now, you can see that they both end with just over $1 million, which is a pretty solid amount of money saved up for their retirement. What I'm doing is I'm making them withdraw $50,000 every single year, and I'm making them need $50,000 every single year to live off of for their ideal retirement, which means that Steven is going to have to withdraw $58,530 because he's going to have to pay tax on his withdrawals. And now that Steven is taking out more money during his retirement than he was in if I can drag it down, in this example, he is going to be in a higher tax bracket and he's just going to have to pay more tax dollar for dollar. And as time goes on, you can just look and see the differences at age 80 of, you know, almost 200,000, around $180,000. Now, as you can see here at age 85, that there's a large difference between these two retirement accounts. And by age 95, Joe has $414,000 and Steven has $0. He actually runs out of money at age 94. And so this just goes to show how big of a difference an extra $8,530 makes on a retirement portfolio. And so it's definitely something that you need to make sure that you are prepared for if you know that you have to pay tax during your retirement. And that is the nice thing about Roth IRAs is no matter what the tax brackets are in the future, we don't know what the tax environment is going to be. You won't have to pay tax on your withdrawals. And so it definitely provides a little bit more certainty than a traditional IRA. And in terms of the traditional IRA, maybe you want to move to a different state that you have to pay more state income tax in, and that might be to your disadvantage, depending on what state that is. Because if you're in a state that doesn't have to pay any tax, then I mean, that's going to be a lot better for your retirement. But if you do move to a state that you do have to pay more income tax, then it's obviously going to be more damaging to your portfolio. So I appreciate you watching this video and I hope it was helpful. And I just wish you the best of luck on all your endeavors. Have a nice day.